Chapter 5 of Somme Battle Stories by Alec John Dawson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5 Close Quarters. Among those who were permitted to board a certain hospital ship when she berthed at Southampton was Lieutenant H., an officer of the Territorials, whose battalion accomplished some fine work at Pozieres. This officer was sent home during the early part of the Somme offensive, slightly wounded, and will by now have returned to duty. He had not taken half a dozen steps on the vessel's deck before he was saluted by a private of his own battalion, whose jacket was thickly coated with the grime of later fighting at Pozieres, and spattered over with blood as to its left shoulder. In the powwow that followed, one tried to get as accurate a record as possible of this man's own words. This was about the way of it. "I found your glasses and stick, sir, close to where the stretcher-bearers were hung up that time. You remember, sir, that little dead end where there had been an old French dug-out? There was a big gas gong hanging there, you may remember, sir, on the haft of a broken pick in the side of the trench. I gave 'em to Sergeant so they wouldn't be lost. The platoon's in clover now, sir. They were coming out for rest when I was taken away. It was after the Pozieres scrappin' was over I got my second wound, getting back down the new sap we made. My first was nothing, machine-gun bullet. The platoon's to have 2 or 3 days' rest, I believe, sir. Seems queer, resting back there in what used to be the Boche lines, you know, sir. They're ours now, all right, and some of the deep dug-outs are first rate. Came through the crumping all right, they did. That place the Blanks raided, you know, sir, in June it was, when the prisoners started scrapping on the way back across no man's land. You could see our chaps lying about there smoking and using their Tommy cookers now. But we had a hot time all right after you left, sir. The way it was when you left it went on just the same, not a minute's break for the rest of the night, all day long and the next night, before any ease-up came. But Captain said the platoon had done real well, sir, what there was left of us. You could see he was pleased, and the commanding officer, sir, he said we was a credit to the regiment. So I think you can feel all right about the platoon, sir. We were moved up to the right, our company, after you left, and were next the Australians, and I must say they did fight like men, sir, but not any more than our boys. There was a bit o' racing like between us there, you know, sir, and one of the Anzac corporals told me we made it easy for 'em. But that must have been his blarney, sir, because there wasn't nothing easy for anybody in such a hell as that Pozieres was. I thought at first being dark would make it better for us, but now I think the daylight best. We got to that road at last, you know, sir. It seemed we never could, because of their machine guns, but we did, and the Boche, he had it fair honeycombed with deep dug-outs and trenches. But we put the wind up him properly when we got there, sir, my word we did, and those what was left was pretty glad to get their hands up. After the cruel time they'd given us on the slope, our boys did want a mix-up at the end, but Mr. and Captain they wouldn't have it, sir. They were running up and down our line telling us about it, and Captain he was near choking for want of breath. But he shouted all he could, and kept all on putting himself between the Boches with their hands up and us, and every one of the Boches was taken prisoner and not a one hurt. It's right, too, of course, when they surrender. When the order came for our platoon to hold on to that little ridge above where you was hit, sir, I must say I thought it couldn't be done. We was all alone, you know, sir, and when they tried to bring up another platoon, they had to be recalled, for the Boche, he had that ground so swept with his typewriters a swaller couldn't have flown there. 5 separate times the Hun came down on us, and when he wasn't charging he was crumpin' and machine-gunning something chronic. If you lifted your head to look just for a second, you got it in the neck every time. When we got the reinforcement up that night from number 8 and number 7, there was only one of us hadn't been hit. That was little Joey Green in my section, you know, sir. But we were able to keep the Lewis gun going when they were charging. I think that's what saved us, really, sir. Couldn't use it only when they was chargin', or it would have been blowin' out of action in a second. But we peppered 'em all right when their fire lifted to let 'em charge. A good little gun, sir, though it did get red hot. I tell you, sir, I felt like blessin' the chaps that made it so's it could stick the job, and the chaps that fired it, too, when they'd been plenty badly wounded. You see, sir, we was all right with the bayonet, so long as it was only maybe 2 Boches for each of us when they charged. We could manage that pretty comfortable. But if it hadn't been for the Lewis, I think we'd have had half a dozen Boches to each one of us every time he charged, and I don't think we could have stood it. I had a little parapet of 3 of 'em, head to tail, in front of me, and I reckon that sheltered me quite a lot. I've got their 3 caps and bayonet sheaths here that I tied on the back of me belt. The 5th time the Boche charged, I stopped one with a bullet just before he could reach my bayonet, and the one behind him threw down his rifle and shouted "Mercy!" with his hands over his head. I wouldn't have hurt him, didn't want to hurt the beggar, you know, sir, though you'd be pretty sick to see one of our boys do the like of that. But it seemed he couldn't help himself, and he ran right on to my bayonet. Spitted himself, he did. I did my very best to patch up the last one, but it was no go. He snuffed it, sir, while I was fixin' my field dressing on him. I felt sorry for that Boche, in a way, seein' I hadn't wanted to hurt him at all. I suppose they can't help bein' different from our chaps. Merci, camarade, and all that. And here is another little story of a private soldier who did his bit on the left of Pozières. A company quartermaster sergeant, who was wounded by a stray bullet at a ration dump well behind the lines, gave me a note for an officer now in hospital in London. I found out what hospital he was in from the R.A.M.C. staff, and wired asking permission for the publication of the note I was sending him. His reply was, "Anything you like that will do justice to as fine a lot of men as any officer ever had." Well, I don't think this little note does them any injustice, anyhow. I am bringing you the wristlet watch that was on Blank's wrist, because the other batman told me it was yours, and only lent to Blank. As I am told you are somewhere in London, sir, I dare say you may be seeing his family. He was with the front line on the left of Pozières with the rest of his platoon. His mates tell me his rifle had been knocked out of his hand. The shell holes there must have been hard to cross at the double, in the dark, with such a heavy fire on, too. But Blank somehow managed to down his man all right. When they found him he had a Boche's bayonet and rifle in his right hand, and his left hand was at the throat of the Boche he'd killed. He was lyin' right across the man, and he had a bullet through his head. We think a machine-gun bullet got him while he struggled with the Boche on the ground, after sticking him with his own bayonet. So you see, sir, your batman died pretty game like the rest of our boys who went west. But I am glad to say our casualties have been pretty light on the whole, when you think of the masses of Boche dead, not to mention the prisoners. I hear the Brigadier is very pleased indeed with the battalion's work, and that many in our company will be mentioned in dispatches. The Sergeant Major sent his best respects, and hopes your wound is healing well. We have been doing fine lately in the matter of boots and socks, and the rations and bath arrangements have been going like clockwork since you had it out with Blank, sir. End of chapter 5.